Now, one of Africa's frontline non-profit organizations promoting participatory democracy, human rights, and civic participation, Yiaga Africa, has therefore called on INEC and the security agencies involved in the conduct of the November 11th off-cycle elections to ensure the protection of voters' rights during and after the polls. This morning on Breakfast Central, we are joined by the Program Manager Elections, Yiaga Africa, Mr. Paul James. Good morning, Mr. James. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. Good morning.
Great to have you. The big question is, has INEC learned any lessons? Is INEC ready to to fix its image, in the eyes of the Bayelsa and Imo and Kogi state people? Or do we expect that it's going to be business as usual? Because, there were almost no punitive measures for the last time that it happened.
I think there are pointers to indicate that INEC is getting ready, or ready as it were, for the election. I have no doubt in my mind that we will see an improvement over the elections over what had happened in the March 18th or the February 25th presidential election. To the point, in fact, that the commission that we know, INEC's conduct in election always oscillates. In one election, you see that the performance will be poor. They come to the next election, INEC will do better and then raise hopes. By the time you go to the next cycle of election, INEC will then dash the hopes again. They know a lot is at stake. This is an election that are happening also under very difficult circumstances, from the security crisis in some states to also the point that we know there is a lot of citizen distrust in INEC and even in our elections. So INEC know that a lot is at stake. These are high stakes elections, and INEC will do all that they think is in its power to be able to deliver a good and credible election. We have seen signs from every election. INEC used to come up with a 14-point checklist of what it intends to do. As late as even early October, I was in a meeting at the INEC headquarters here, where the commission reeled out all that it has been able to achieve. In fact, in early October, the commission has sent non-sensitive materials to all of the local governments, all the 50 local governments where elections will happen in the 3 states. And these non-sensitive materials have been batched according to polling unit. And I'm also aware that the commission, as part of the preparatory activities, had recruited staff, had trained staff, had also provided the list of registered voters to political parties, and as well had released the list of voters that have collected at PVCs in the 3 states ahead of the election. So these are all positive signs to show that the commission is ready. As of yesterday, we also had received reports that they have also started distributing sensitive materials to the local government. So I think it's a sign that they are ready, and also the talks that have also been happening behind the scene with other stakeholders, that the National Union of Road Transport Workers. I am hopeful that we might see an improved logistic arrangement, and also that could lead to early deployment of INEC and then commencement of polls. What is a worry for me is the commitment we want to see between INEC and also the synergy between INEC and the security agencies, because in the past, what has been a challenge for INEC is that in the morning of the election, if they don't have security deployment, INEC will not deploy. And so what happens sometimes is in the morning of elections, you see security doing head count or doing some security parade before they deploy. Last week, we were in Imo, where we interfaced with the Commissioner of Police. He made commitment that on their part, they will ensure that all of this will have been conducted day before the election, so that they will have an unhindered deployment on election day. So we are hoping, like I said, with all of this positive commitment we have seen from the stakeholders, that we're going to have a good election.
Now, we've talked about INEC's preparedness. You seem very positive about INEC's end of the bargain. Let's talk about the citizens. Do you think that all the actions that have been put in by the government, law enforcement agents, and INEC is enough to instill confidence and hope for the common man? Do you think that there'll be a mass turnout, to the polls tomorrow? There'll be a mass turnout of people at the polls tomorrow exercising their civic responsibility?
Well, this is what we all hope for. But again, speaking for the citizen, a lot of things have happened that could potentially impact their participation. If we take it on a case by case basis, you go to states like Imo, states like Kogi, because of the insecurities or the violence that had happened around the election, it could potentially put some fear in the minds of the citizens and could derail or affect their participation in the election. In Imo, based on the pre-election report that we have gathered at Yiaga, we had like 7 local governments that were flashpoints. Places like Olu, Oru, Oru East, Oru West, Okigwe, Ohaji, Ema, and Oguta that we know had suffered some different sort of shades of election-related violence and even insecurities related to the agitation for succession, the agitations in those part of the country, to the effect that at some point, INEC even had to relocate its services from the Osu office to its headquarters in Owerri. As of last week, the commission and the security had committed that they were going to return back to Osu, and election will be conducted in that local government. And if you think about states like Kogi State, where for some time in Kogi East, Senatorial district specifically, there has been this sort of clash between the SDP and the APC, and then, of course, the people suffer for it. Bayelsa has been quiet on that front, save for the rhetoric we hear from the politicians and also these concerns around hate speech and all of that. But to some sense, Bayelsa seems to be like a better environment compared to Kogi or Bayelsa, so Kogi or Imo. But with that fear, I thought the commission, the security with what they are doing may be a little too late. As of yesterday, we heard they are in all of the state doing what they call show of force. My sense will have been this show of force will have been earlier, because if persons have made up their mind that based on what had happened in the build up to the election, that they are not going to participate, I'm not sure that whatever the security want to do just 24 hours to the election could change that. But I'm also hoping that, I mean, people understand the power of their vote and why participation is key. Maybe we may see a last-minute change of mind, and that is what we are emphasizing on as stakeholders, especially CSOs, that everybody should get involved in this last-minute effort to see how we can help to bring up, to encourage more people to participate tomorrow.
I'm actually excited, that for, the first time in a long time, we've not had, a lot of conversations about vote buying. It used to be very popular in 2007, 2011, but it's not a very common, thing in current day elections. But I want to, talk, about, no matter how sincere INEC's, moves are, their plans are, I think one thing that is glaring is the fact that there are state or non-state actors, that can always get involved with the electoral process and mar the process, but they never really get punished. And that's why we continue to see these, issues with the elections. For example, thuggery, happens every now and then with the electoral process. Nobody really gets punished or arrested. People lost their lives in February when they had the general elections. We didn't really get to see a lot of people get punished or arrested, for that. When INEC ad hoc staff also, make mistakes, do not upload, there's network challenges, nobody really gets punished. So do you think that maybe is where we aren't, getting it right with the process? Because no matter how honest INEC wants to be, if these things continue to happen because people can see these loopholes, how do we ever get it right?
I think you said everything. I agree with you, quite frankly, that the challenge has been the lack of sanction in all of this. Our laws are very good, very fantastic. They have spelled out what should happen at every point if there is any infraction or violation of this law. Sanction has become the challenge. It has become endemic to the effect that it will surprise you that sometimes when you approach some of these stakeholders with some of these concerns or these issues, they will tell you, oh, of course, we are aware and we are doing something about it. I recall in the 2022 elections in Ekiti State and even in Osun specifically, or Ekiti first, we had a location in Ekiti that has been very difficult for people to vote. It has been very difficult for observers to penetrate. And we brought that up at a stakeholder meeting with the security. And they told us, oh, we know about this location and we will assure you that this time around, people were going to vote. And of course, election happened in that location. In Osun as well, we had a very notorious criminal called Eniba that had threatened election was not going to happen in Oshobo. At a stakeholder meeting, we raised it up with the security, and they told us, oh yes, we are going to put him out of circulation. And they did. Election did happen in that community, in that local government. The point I'm making here is to the fact that they knew all of these things. Most times, it's either I thought this is a word that has been overused, a political will to even act. So when we begin to see enforcement, and when we talk about even the enforcement, the sanctions should even begin with some high-profile persons, because to my mind, they are even the ones sponsoring or behind all of these things that we see around our elections. What is even more concerning is how we are beginning, or they are beginning to weaponize election violence in the electoral process. In the build-up to the election, you'll be wondering when they are even going to war, especially when you begin to hear about issues or concerns of election insecurity happening before the election. And the election day, you see also violence that will happen in some point in the ballot box snatching and all of that. Why is that happening? Sometimes it is happening even to weaken the stronghold of an opposition. And that's exactly what is happening in Kogi. Most of the violence happening in the Kogi is, for instance, because one of the strong opposition is coming from that part of the state. And so we see that even on election day, when politicians, since they are failing or they are not doing well, they unleash violence in those locations. Because if you also recall, part of what INEC has in its guideline is that INEC will cancel election in locations where there are violence, or INEC will cancel election also in locations where there are overvoting. So I think sometimes those are the tactics that the politicians deliberately exploit to weaken the opponent. And I think for me, just like you had also alluded, when we begin to enforce sanctions, perhaps it will help to reduce all of this that is happening around our elections.
Just to quickly talk about pre-election, I mean, we're still in pre-election phase. Do you think that it would have been very important in all these states where the off-cycle elections are happening that we prioritized having gubernatorial or governorship debates amongst the candidates to ensure that the citizens get to understand, have a platform to understand what these candidates are bringing to the table, and also ask them questions? Do you think that would have made a significant difference in the way things would have turned out, or the way things would turn out at the elections?
It could have made impact, but beyond even the debate is even to look at how closed the electoral space has been in some of the states. You got some states that have imposed heavy sanctions on the pasting of campaign posters. Some states are charging as much as 54 million to paste campaign posters. Some are charging 50 million. So you go to a state like Imo and you see the whole streets, the whole local government of Owerri municipal is littered by the poster of just one party. And then you begin to wonder whether you are going to just, whether we are going to a just one party carnival, or is a political or electoral season. These are the strong arm tactics that have been deployed by especially the incumbents in the states to ensure they stifle the opposition party. So we saw that in Kogi. We saw that also happen in Imo. So that also doesn't give the other parties the chance to truly sell their candidates or their ideas to the people. And the other thing you also see is the restriction of the political space, especially around media spaces. So you go to some state-owned media outfits, and then the oppositions are not allowed or given a level playing field to also be able to sell ideas to the people. The ideas of debate, like you had also rightly said, we could have solved it, but also if you think about some of the huge costs that come with organizing the debate. Sometimes you organize this debate, the person that you also expect to show up at the debate will feel that, it's a settled deal or a done deal for them. They don't necessarily have to appear before that. They are so arrogant that you don't get to see them appear in debates. We have seen that in national election where major candidates in the election have failed or refused to show up at the debate. So if that is not yielding what people wanted, perhaps we could begin to look at other channels or other avenues that opposition could export to be able to get through to the people. One of which for me is that when we begin to have strong regulations that will also provide that level playing field for everyone, perhaps it will help to sanitize that process as well.
Things turn out, it's really just, years and years, that unfortunately have to come into play to sanitize Nigeria's leadership recruitment process. I'm sure every Nigerian wishes that it, was happening faster. The Buhari administration, made some moves here and there, to improve on the process, that Nigerians can say, okay, at least thank you for signing the Electoral Act and things like that. What are two things that you feel, the current administration maybe should ensure that they set in motion in the time that they are there to improve on Nigeria's leadership recruitment process?
I think the first is, if you look at the means through which these leaders emerge, the political party structure, I think we need to strengthen that institution. What is also becoming a cliche is always this thing you hear around the lack of internal party democracy. For some persons, all they care is just a platform for them to get into power. So they have said, political party structure in Nigeria has been reduced to that tool of just power ascendancy, and not necessarily with the intent to really grow it to the effect that it becomes very strong and viable. And another thing to also point is the fact that even within the party structure, sometimes some of the things you see happen around that does not even provide that level playing field or that opportunity, especially for persons that you think will aspire and be able to even get on the ballot to do that, especially when they begin to charge exorbitant fees for party candidate nomination and all of that. So I think internally, those are the things that you want to see the party look through and begin to do that. And again, we could use the instrument of the law to achieve that. When the Buhari administration was reviewing the Electoral Act, there were concerns raised from the stakeholders, especially CSO, about putting a peg to how much a party should charge, and that should be enshrined in the Electoral Act. But then Buhari administration came up with an argument to say, oh no, this should be left to the party to decide that this should be a party affair. But I think if we truly want to revolutionize the process, it should start from there, that we should have as a matter of law something that regulates how much a party should charge, so that, of course, like I said, it will also allow the level playing field for everybody to be able to truly put up themselves to be elected to vote. So we need to pay attention very strongly to what happened around the political party structures. For also people that participate in the election, we need to also understand that that is the key, that is where it starts. Most times people wait until election, then they are left with the option of either the devil or the deep blue sea, and then they begin to say, oh, they cannot participate because they don't like the option that the parties are putting up before them. So we need to definitely pay attention to what the political party is doing, but importantly, like I said, also push for strong legislations that will help to grow our institution and also ensure that the people within the institution do what is right by the people and by extension by our democracy.
And maybe also, some clarity exactly on, what the Electoral Act says about uploading results on Arab or not. But we don't have time for that. Thank you very much, Mr. Paul James, for stopping by. And of course, thanks to Yiaga Africa for the work that they do. We look forward to speaking with you again.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. All the best. Yeah.
All right. To talk about the off-cycle elections and bring you updates from News Central's Niyi Omoni, who is monitoring developments in Imo State for us. Good morning, Niyi, or do I say Kedu?
Niyi, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you, Osarogie. I can hear you.
Okay, I think this sounds a lot better now. Thanks for joining us. Tell us what's going on in Imo State this morning.
Well, Osarogie, it's less than 24 hours to the D-Day, and of course, everyone is geared up. There is, yesterday or a week before, the governor had let today be a public holiday, not a particular seat at the border, but a public holiday for everyone. So most civil servants, aside people who are doing their personal businesses, actually just sitting up in a tree the day before. Gather more strength. We don't know why the governor did that. However, we hear and reports reach us even from some of our schools and municipalities. Some local governments, there are system in those local governments, and the people there are not even moved out at all. And this might not be so good a day to the election if the people are already living in fear around their community, around their locality. At less than 24 hours, they can't come out. So what will happen on the day of the election? But from the main town, in Owerri, everyone is just ready, to exercise their franchise.
All right. Let's also talk about, you said there is some form of sit at home. I don't know if that's a fair way to call it or a fair phrase to refer to it as. But let's talk about, the willingness of people to come out to vote. Do you sense that there is a willingness, or is there a high level of voter apathy present in most states?
The state has about over 5 million people in terms of population, and registered voters for this year's election is just about 2.4. That is almost half of the population in itself. Now, with all this tension that's been going around, it's not everyone. While some people are actually gearing up and saying, you know what, we are ready for this election, we are going to vote, we are going to exercise our franchise, especially for people in towns, in those local communities, in those riverine areas, of which the person has actually assured yesterday, because we spoke with the first PRO, Olumuyiwa Adegrabi, yesterday, and he said that they have ensured that there's safety, air, they even got a chopper to actually patrol the state, air, waterways, and even those riverine areas, there's going to be gunboats and everything. And there are going to be police assigned to various polling units. Although the police assigned to the polling units won't be armed, then there will be another set of police that will be armed patrolling the area. Then the third that will be patrolling the community. But I'm not sure this will still give so much guarantee to the people who by now, less than 24 hours to the D-Day, are already experiencing some sort of fear in their local communities. Yes, people want to vote. Some people want to vote. In fact, yesterday, residents themselves, the electorates themselves, were going around sensitizing people, not representing any party, and telling people to come out to vote, how to vote, when to vote, where you need to go to pass your vote, how do you know which polling unit you need to exercise your franchise. But we might be seeing a lot of voter apathy, especially in the local areas, while we can agree that the town is a more secure place. And I must say that security presence is going to be the police command yesterday. There are troops of military officers and, of course, security operatives have been deployed around the state, even more than we've seen in various states during the general election. So this might raise some sort of confidence or some sort of safety for the people. But, of course, for people who are already experiencing such tensions now, there might be some, they might just be in front of their house and trying to watch around and see if it's safe enough before they now come out to say they want to exercise their franchise.
Security has made majority of the conversations concerning the elections, and it really shouldn't be so. But of course, we'll see how tomorrow turns out. We'll just remind you to stay safe. The NLC conversation, of course, is something that would also bring up as time passes. But thanks very much, Nii, for that very, very interesting delivery on what the current situation is in Imo State. We'll speak with you again.